Welcome back to Higher Level Gaming. I'm Rob, and today we are talking about some more major history in the world of video games. The developers of Life is Strange Don't Nod announced a brand new game that they are developing at Xbox's big end of the year event, XO19. This game seems to be much like Life is Strange Seasons 1 and 2, and it will also be tackling some issues of representation in video games. As we probably all know, Life is Strange starred a lesbian woman as the protagonist, and Life is Strange Season 2 saw a starring Hispanic lead. Those are both two highly underrepresented demographics in video games. Tell Me Why will be attempting to represent trans people for the first time ever in a video game as the protagonist. That makes this game extremely historic in the AAA space because, as far as I'm concerned, Life is Strange and those other games were mainstream AAA level games. You could call them indie games, but compared to most niche indie games, these games are fairly mainstream. We have never seen a trans person as the main character you play in a game like this ever before. Don't Nod themselves boasted that this is the first playable video game hero from a major studio and publisher who is also transgender. So we just gotta give them a huge pat on the back. This is groundbreaking stuff, guys, and we are extremely happy to see this in gaming. I think gaming needs a lot more representation of a lot more demographics, and I love playing games that star characters that are not your average typical gamer. I love playing games where you don't play as a generic straight white dude. I mean, that's nothing negative to say about being a straight white dude, it's just that's essentially every video game. The game stars a set of Alaskan twins, Tyler and Allison Ronan, who had a troubled childhood. Tell Me Why is slated for a summer 2020 release on Xbox One, Windows, and it's coming to Games Pass. So if you're like me and you have Games Pass, you'll be able to play this game as soon as it releases. Now, importantly, Don't Nod has worked closely with the LGBT advocacy group GLAAD to help bring the protagonist to life in a meaningful and accurate and respectful way. Nick Adams, director of transgender representation at GLAAD, said that Tyler is a fully realized, endearing character whose story is not reduced to a simplistic trans trope. There's also a bigger story here in The Hollywood Reporter, where the video game director Florent Guillaume says that he partnered to understand the hopes, fears, and lives of trans individuals, and their goal was not to have an agenda or present an archetype. So this is going to be a fully fleshed out, fully realized character, which is just great for any game because, let me be honest with you guys, the average game doesn't present a character that's not just a walking trope or a walking archetype. Most games don't have great character development, so it's awesome to hear that they put so much work into developing this authentic character. He also said that one of the things that GLAAD did that was especially helpful was they gave us a history lesson, not just in games but in media as well, the good and the bad. Staten tells The Hollywood Reporter it's been really important for everyone on the project to understand the history of LGBTQ representation and transgender representation in games to make sure we did our best to get it right. He goes on to say, we develop characters and stories because we believe in their value and in giving an experience to players. He says it took a long time to craft this character, and he hopes that players are able to identify with Tyler for his humanity. Tyler is a young man with great values, good and bad elements, and that's what makes him human. Also, Tyler is being voice acted by August Black. The vocal cast was a priority from day one, and it was important that we cast in a representative and authentic way, says Staten. Not only did we cast a trans actor for the English part, we're working hard to find people in the localized languages as well and make sure we have a strong, representative performance no matter where in the world you might play the game. And there you have it, the first AAA mainstream game to be coming out that will represent trans people as the protagonist in the game. Wow, this is revolutionary. One of the most important things they said in that little interview was that they had to really look at representation of trans people. So I'm going to take the time to go through with you guys some history of trans representation in video games briefly. So first we have an article from Kotaku written by Luke Plunkett, and he talks about the transgender icon Poison. Now, Poison was not the first transgender character in a video game, and in fact, the only reason Poison is considered to be transgender is because of a localization where in the United States, the character was referred to as a man because they didn't think that it would go over well having to beat up a sexy lady. However, Capcom has somewhat turned this into a positive thing, and in an interview with EGM at the Tokyo Game Show, Capcom's Yoshinori Ono said, "Capcom's official stance has and will continue to be that we don't have a stance technically. It's supposed to be mysterious. If people want to talk about it on forums, they're welcome to. But we're not going to give you a straight answer because, well, there isn't one. We deliberately want to make it a mysterious thing, the question of what's the core of this character. At the end of the day, we don't have a canonical answer to that." It's interesting because it almost takes on a sort of Rorschach test. If you go into it with the preconceived notion she's a woman, the way she talks, the way she moves, you'll see all of that as being very feminine. If you go in with the notion that she's not, her actions and mannerisms will seem the other way to you. It's very open-ended. From my point of view, I'm very happy to have fans continue to discuss that, but once again, we're not going to give an official answer. So, this isn't the best or worst answer for them to give. I don't think it's a good thing to leave it ambiguous because then you're basically saying we don't have to give people representation officially, we can just let you keep your headcanon. But at the same time, this character is not depicted in a negative way with negative stereotypes, so many people consider Poison to be a trans icon. Going back before Poison, there is of course Birdo. Birdo is the first ever trans video game character to be introduced, and she was introduced in 1988 with a description that said that she identifies as a woman despite being a man. Now, although the first game misgenders Birdo because they say that she's a man who believes she's a woman, she was actually voice acted by a Japanese trans person. Unfortunately, however, they are referred to as Okama, which is actually a slur that suggests trans people are highly promiscuous. So that's not a good thing, really. And the proper transgender identifier in Japanese is transke. There have been worse cases of representation though, and Birdo is actually expanded upon in the game Captain Rainbow, where she talks about her struggles as a trans character. Shortly after Birdo, there was a trans character in the game Circuit's Edge. Here we see that it says Yasmin was married Audron's longtime girlfriend, although she hadn't been born female. So basically, this is just a character. They're not really expanded upon much in the game, but it is a character that is a trans woman depicted in a feminine way, not in a masculine way or in a way that is meant to belittle them. So you can consider this the second ever instance of a transgender as a somewhat positive one, or at least one that normalizes it and doesn't attempt to stigmatize being trans. Now, moving on to some more popular games, we have in Pokemon X and Y a woman who used to be a black belt, and she says quite the transformation, wouldn't you say? Because the black belts in Pokemon are an exclusively male group of trainers, and she has become a beauty, which is part of a exclusively female group of trainers. This is also a case of a trans woman being represented in games, and it was in Pokemon. But again, Nintendo hasn't shied away, as we saw with Birdo, from trans themes. Damien Bloodmarch, one of the daddies in Dream Daddy, is also a trans man, and that was confirmed on Twitter by one of the creators of the game. Here, a fan of the series asked, "Please confirm Damien is trans. I need this. I need it really bad." and the creator said yes. And they said, thank you so much, you have no idea how happy this makes me, and this just goes to show you how important it is to be represented in media, how important it is to see people who are like you represented in video games, even if you might think it's not that big of a deal. Jackie was a trans woman in the popular indie game Night in the Woods. Many have also theorized that Madeline from Celeste is also a trans woman, although we have no concrete confirmation for this, though I do go over in one of my older videos an entire breakdown of why people believe Madeline to be trans, and I'll leave a link to that in the description. Vivian is another trans Nintendo character from Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. Although she wasn't represented as being trans in the English version, they changed her to being cisgender. She was trans in the Japanese release of the game. So Nintendo has done a pretty decent job when it comes to this kind of representation. One company that has failed pretty badly, however, at representation of trans characters has been Atlus, the creators of Catherine and the Persona series. Erica Anderson is a trans woman that is revealed to be trans in the game during one of the different endings for Catherine, and it is also meant to be kind of a negative thing that she's trans because you had a sexual relation with her in the game, and it's considered to be basically like a shameful thing. And obviously, if it's shameful to, have a relationship with a trans woman, you're portraying them in the worst way possible. Not only that, but in Persona 2, a character that is said to look cute is portrayed as a trans person. But again, here, it is seen as a shameful thing for a character to call them cute because they are trans. Again, this is transphobic. And we even have more in Persona 3 when a trans woman is portrayed as a predator during the mission Operation Babe Hunt at the beach. Grand Theft Auto 5 was extremely transphobic, depicting trans women as hyper-masculine and essentially cross-dressers. You can also sling slurs at them, and the game almost encourages you to take out your violent tendencies against these people. Now, although Tell Me Why is the first mainstream game to star a trans protagonist, there was another notable game to star a trans protagonist, Dysphoria. This game was designed by Anna Anthropy, a trans woman, so it's the only video game instance of a trans character being written by a trans person, and the game goes extremely deep into how a person suffering from dysphoria feels. And it is also probably one of the most artistic LGBTQ games ever made. Leisure Suit Larry also fails horribly at representing trans women, and in fact, it represents one woman as a rapist, or if Larry goes along with the woman's advances, it represents him as no longer being a man and losing his masculinity in the process. So obviously, really horrible transphobic things going on in Leisure Suit Larry, but what did we expect from such a garbage series? Well, that's a brief rundown of some of the good and some of the bad when it comes to trans representation in games. I look forward to seeing all the news that comes out for this game, Tell Me Why, and to playing it sometime next year. Let me know in the comments what you think of any of the games or characters we went over today, and if you're excited for this new upcoming game. This has been Higher Level Gaming. You can subscribe to always find out when we post videos like this, or like this video to support the channel. But above all else, don't forget to go play some video games and have a nice day.